As great as comic books can be, they tend to have a very specific status quo. The hero fights the villain and then sends them to jail. That villain then escapes and fights the hero. Wash, rinse, repeat. But every once in a while, the villain decides to try to be a better person. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today we will be looking at the top 10 villains you never knew became superheroes. We're going to be focusing on characters who are primarily known as villains, so you won't be seeing characters who started as villains but have been heroes for most of their history, like say Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch. On another note, we have a very special message for our subscribers at the end of this video, so make sure to check that out. With all that out of the way, let's dive into the list. Number 10. The Pied Piper. Hartley Rathaway was born deaf, but had his hearing medically restored and developed a love for music. He learned how to hypnotize others with music to force them to do what he wanted, and he became the supervillain the Pied Piper. He was sent to a mental hospital, and unlike everyone who goes to Arkham, it actually worked, and Hartley began using his abilities for good, making sure that the city's homeless were fed and sheltered. He became good friends with Wally West's Flash, and has even helped Flash take out a few villains over the years, such as the Turtle and Mirror Master. Number 9. Two-Face. Harvey Dent was once one of Batman's staunchest allies, working with him as Gotham's district attorney in their effort to root out the crime and corruption that had plagued the city. This all changed when Dent was talking to the crime boss Salvatore Maroni in court. Maroni had smuggled in a vial of highly corrosive acid into the courtroom and threw it in Harvey's face, disfiguring half of his face and turning the heroic district attorney into the villainous Two-Face. Two-Face is obsessed with duality and flips a coin to determine whether or not he will kill his enemies. Two-Face is one of Batman's worst enemies, but when the villain Hush gave him plastic surgery, he switched back to the side of law and order and betrayed Hush, helping Batman and Jim Gordon defeat the villain. Batman's friend was back. He trained Harvey to become a vigilante and left him in charge of protecting Gotham while he was away during the Lost Year arc. Unfortunately, when Batman returned, he came across a series of killings that were designed to make it appear that Harvey had returned to villainy. Batman confronted Harvey, who was so angered at Batman's distrust that his Two-Face persona re-emerged and convinced Dent to re-scar his face and return to a life of crime. Number 8. Absorbing Man. Carl Creel was a former boxer turned criminal who was in prison when the trickster god Loki gave him the power to absorb the properties of whatever he touched, making him a powerful villain known as the Absorbing Man. Over the years, Creel went up against a host of heroes, including Thor, Spider-Man, Daredevil, and the Hulk, but he always ended up back in jail. When the government decided to go after the Hulk, they gave Creel boosted powers and sent him to take out Hulk. For reasons that are too complex to get into here, Creel was taken over by the One Below All and sent to Hell until he was rescued by the newly formed Gamma Flight, an organization dedicated to subduing dangerous gamma mutates. They offered Creel a spot on the team and a full pardon, and the Absorbing Man became a fully sanctioned hero, dedicated to helping people rather than hurting them. Number 7. Dr. Octopus. One of Spider-Man's oldest foes, first appearing in Amazing Spider-Man number 3, Dr. Otto Octavius was a gifted scientist before the 4 mechanical arms he created to help with his experiments were fused to his body, driving him insane and into a life of crime. Doc Ock actually did eventually become a superhero, when he swapped bodies with Peter Parker and chose to become the Superior Spider-Man. Although still a temperamental egomaniac, Octavius was able to do a lot of good as the new webbed wall crawler, eventually even sacrificing his life so that Peter could regain control of the body and save the day from the Goblin King. Otto soon returned to life, but unfortunately returned to a life of villainy soon after. It must be frustrating for Spider-Man to fight his old foe now that he knows for a fact that Otto could be and was an amazing superhero for a time. Number 6. Sandman. William Baker was raised in less than ideal circumstances, with a father who abandoned him as a baby and a mother who coped with this by drinking too much. He grew up to be a bully, calling himself Flint and picking on those weaker and smaller than him. After being expelled from high school for throwing a football game, Flint turned to crime to support himself. He was eventually arrested but broke out of prison and was exposed to radiation that gave him the power to turn his body into sand that he could reshape into whatever shape he liked. He used these powers to fight heroes such as Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four for years, but eventually expressed a desire to go straight. He developed a friendship with the Thing, and even rescued his old nemesis Spider-Man from the evil enforcers. He would go on to join Silver Sable's Wild Pack, and was eventually allowed to join the Avengers, showing that he really did have it in him to be a hero. Unfortunately, a villain known as the Wizard created a machine that undid all of Flint's hard work and returned him to his evil nature. Number 5. MODOK Superior. MODOK Superior is the cloned brain of the original MODOK in a new robot body. Like the original MODOK, this version wanted to do as much evil as possible. However, he eventually made a deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to help them uncover a traitor in exchange for amnesty. He planned on betraying Maria Hill, but realized that he'd fallen in love with her. This caused MODOK Superior to have a change of heart, and he became a rather unconventional hero, helping the Secret Avengers and forming his own hero team, mercenary organization dedicated only to killing. He also programmed himself for love, and created a more attractive version of himself called BroDoc, bio-robotic organism designed overwhelmingly for kissing. But his inability to handle rejection from women soon led him back down the path of villainy. Number 4. The Green Goblin. Norman Osborn is perhaps the most awful villain in Spider-Man's rogues gallery. He has spent years trapped in a cycle of hatred and violence with Peter Parker, and is responsible for some of the worst moments in Peter's life, such as the death of one of Peter's great loves, Gwen Stacy. Which is why the idea of the Green Goblin becoming a superhero seems so strange. And yet, it happened. When the Sin Eater took away Norman's sins, Osborn was reformed. He wanted to make up for the evil that he had spent years doing, and he ditched the Green Goblin persona and got a new suit and name, calling himself Gold Goblin, and teaming up with Spider-Man to help keep the city safe. I doubt that Marvel will let Norman be a hero forever, so it's probably only a matter of time before Norman goes off the deep end again, but for now, it's interesting to watch him try and be a hero. Number 3. Clayface. Basil Carlo was a successful and talented actor who was disfigured in a car accident just as his film career was really starting to take off. He began using a chemical putty called Renew, which allowed him to reshape his face in order to try and preserve his career. When his supply ran out, he attempted to steal it from the Gotham chemical plant and ended up being doused in the dangerous chemical. This transformed him into the villain Clayface. Clayface is able to shapeshift in order to impersonate anyone he wants, as well as take the form of anything he wants, transforming his arms into dangerous weapons or suffocating his enemies by taking on a dense mud-like form. He was one of Batman's most dangerous villains for years, but the Dark Knight was able to see his potential for good. He offered him a spot on the Gotham Knights, and Clayface was able to make the transition from supervillain to superhero. Unlike other villains who have dabbled in good deeds but have ultimately returned to evil, Clayface actually seems to prefer being a good guy. Not only has he developed friendships with his teammates, but he also managed to convince other villains to try and redeem themselves when he was able to get the villains Firefly, Knockout, Cheshire, and Killer Croc to help him take out the evil Peacekeeper drones in the Fear State story arc. Villains have an unfortunate habit of returning to evil, but let's hope Clayface is able to resist the temptation and remains one of Gotham's most unlikely heroes. Number 2. The Riddler. When Edward Nygma was a child, he quickly showed that he had a gifted and powerful mind. His father was unable to come to terms with his son's brilliance and would hurt Edward, claiming that Edward's academic achievements were a result of him cheating. This caused Edward to develop a compulsive need to prove his intelligence, which resulted in him becoming the Riddler, a supervillain with the uncontrollable urge to leave riddles at the scenes of his crimes. This tendency to leave clues usually led to him getting caught by Batman. He eventually overcame this compulsion and reformed, becoming an accomplished private detective in Gotham City. He still has a massive ego, but he has helped Batman solve several murders over the years, and has even saved a few lives, including the intended victim of a copycat villain called Conundrum and Dick Grayson. Considering how much he has accomplished as a good guy, it makes me wonder what he could have been capable of had he been raised in a more nurturing environment and had put his genius mind towards good sooner in his life. Unfortunately, all of this character development was undone in the New 52 reboot of the DC Universe, and the Riddler is once again an unrepentant supervillain. Number 1. Lex Luthor. Superman's greatest foe is a billionaire industrial genius who constantly comes up with evil schemes to feed his own ego under the guise of helping humanity. Like Elon Musk if he actually knew how to invent anything. Lex has battled the heroes of the Justice League for years, but eventually ended up saving the Earth from the crime syndicate. This shifted public opinion on the supervillain, and deciding that he liked the attention, Luthor became a hero and even managed to force his way way onto the Justice League. When Superman died in the events of DC Rebirth, Luthor decided to take over the mantle, showing up in Superman's cape and a supersuit with the House of L symbol on its chest. Despite the objection of the pre-Flashpoint Superman, who had been transported to this new reality, Lex operated as a Superman for a while before his resentment of his fellow heroes' mistrust led him to return to evil. It's interesting to know that the only thing preventing Lex from saving the Earth is his own narcissism and ego, and I'm sure it actually makes his evil schemes even more frustrating for the Man of Steel to put up with. Any other supervillains who had a change of heart and helped the good guys? Let us know in the comments below. And now, a message for our subscribers. We've noticed a few of you commenting on all of our videos and wanted to do something to say thank you. So we're going to try something new and do a viewer's pick video for a randomly selected one of our top commenters. So, Rodney Lindsay, pick a comic subject you think would make a good top 10 list and which host you want to tackle the subject. Let us know in the comments and we'll get right to work on it. And for everyone else, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.